Kate Morrison stood by the window of the merchant ship called Wanderer's Hope. She watched Earth get smaller and smaller as the ship moved away. 3 weeks of vacation were over. Now she had to go back to work at the military base on the frontier. Earth looked so beautiful from space, blue and white, peaceful and safe. She felt happy thinking about home, but everything changed in one morning. The alarm went off at 6 in the morning. Kate was in her room reading reports when every screen in the ship turned white. Then a man's face appeared. It was Admiral Frank Hughes. He looked very serious and worried. The Admiral spoke in a firm voice. All military people must report to the nearest station immediately. The Zelthar Empire has attacked our solar system. Earth is under attack. Many colony planets have stopped sending signals. This is real. This is not a practice drill. Kate felt her heart stop. The Zelthar were the most dangerous aliens in the galaxy. They had conquered 17 different species in the last 200 years. Humans had made peace with them 40 years ago. Now that peace was broken, she ran to the observation deck. Lieutenant Jake Peters was already there, working on the long-range sensors. He turned on the display screen. What Kate saw made her want to scream. Earth was on fire. Hundreds of enemy warships filled the solar system like angry insects. Defense platforms around Earth exploded into bright lights. The moon base blew up in a chain of explosions. Mars colony went silent as alien weapons turned everything into melted metal. Kate watched without moving. Energy beams shot down through Earth's atmosphere. Her home was down there. Her family was down there. Her younger brother Danny was in college in New Seattle. Her parents lived on a farm outside Denver. Her sister Claire worked at a hospital in Paris. The radio channels filled with screaming voices. Ships tried to escape from Earth's surface, but enemy fighters shot them down. Kate heard people crying for help. She heard children screaming. Every sound cut into her heart like a knife. Jake spoke quietly. "Kate, I'm getting a message. It's on your family's private channel." Kate's hands shook as she accepted the call. Her father's face appeared on the screen. The picture was bad and kept breaking up. Behind him, she could see fire and smoke everywhere. Her father Richard spoke in a calm voice even though everything around him was burning. "Kate, if you get this message, you need to listen. They attacked us without any warning. No message, no demands. Just death from the sky. Your mother is gone." The first attack destroyed half the valley. Kate felt tears running down her face. Danny was in Seattle. The whole city is destroyed. Claire was helping patients leave the hospital when it got hit directly. "Kate, I'm so sorry." Her father's voice broke. "I don't have much time left. The attack drones are coming back. I need you to promise me something." Kate tried to speak but couldn't. "Promise me you'll make them pay for this. Not because you want revenge, but because it's right. For all the innocent people they killed. The Zelthar think we're weak because we like peace more than war. They think humans are just another species they can control. Show them they're wrong. Show them what humans really are when you take everything from us." The screen went to static. Kate stood frozen, looking at her reflection in the window. Behind her reflection, Earth continued to burn. 6 hours later, the Zelthar fleet finally left. By that time, 3 billion people on Earth were dead. Every major city was destroyed. All the space stations humans had built over 2 centuries were now just floating garbage. Everything had changed forever. The Zelthar Empire sent one simple message to the survivors. "Give up now or we will kill everyone." They gave humanity 48 hours to decide. Kate stood alone in the observation deck for hours. Everyone else had left. She stared at Earth, her dying homeworld. In her hand, she held a small data chip. Her father had given it to her in his last message. On it was one file with a security level she had never seen before. The file name was Project Harbinger. Her father wasn't just a farmer. Before he retired to the countryside, he had been a military researcher. Now in his final moments, he had given her something the Zelthar didn't know about, something that might change everything. Kate looked at the data chip in her hand. Then she looked back at Earth. Her family was gone. Her home was destroyed. 3 billion people were dead. But she was still alive, and she had made a promise to her father. She would make them pay, not with anger or hatred, but with justice. She would show the Zelthar what humans really were. They thought the attack had broken humanity. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Kate wiped the tears from her face. She stood up straight. She was a military officer. She had a job to do. The Zelthar had started this war. Now humanity would finish it. Not in the way the aliens expected. Not with big battles and explosions. But with something far more dangerous. Humans had real weapons. Weapons the Zelthar couldn't see or understand. Weapons that didn't need guns or missiles. Kate's father had spent his life preparing those weapons. Now it was her turn to use them. She left the observation deck and headed to the communication center. She needed to get to Jupiter Station as fast as possible. She needed to find Admiral Hughes. She needed to show him what was on the data chip. The war had just begun, but it would not be the war the Zelthar expected. It would be something completely different. Something terrifying in its own way. The Zelthar had made their biggest mistake. They had attacked Earth. They had killed Kate's family. They had given humanity nothing left to lose, and a human with nothing to lose was the most dangerous thing in the galaxy. The survivor ships gathered at Jupiter Station. It was one of the few places the Zelthar had not destroyed. Maybe they wanted humans to have somewhere to meet. Somewhere to think about their defeat. If that was their plan, they had made a mistake. Kate arrived at Jupiter Station 3 days after the attack. The station was filled with chaos. Ships of every type crowded the docking areas. Military ships mixed with civilian transports and mining ships that had become rescue vehicles. The hallways were full of survivors. Their faces showed grief and shock. A temporary government had formed quickly. Admiral Frank Hughes had survived and taken command of what remained of Earth's forces. His flagship was called the Defiance. Kate asked to meet with him immediately. She told them about the security level on her father's data chip. She waited 6 hours in a small room, while the Admiral dealt with many other problems. Finally, she was called to his office. Inside, she found not just Admiral Hughes, but also General Lisa Brooks from the Marine Corps, and Dr. Nathan Cross, the Director of Military Research. Admiral Hughes pointed to a chair. "Lieutenant Commander Morrison, I knew your father. He was a good man. I'm sorry about what happened to your family." Kate put the data chip on the table. "Thank you, sir. Before he died, my father gave me this. It has a security clearance I've never seen before. The file is called Project Harbinger. I need to know what it is." The 3 officers looked at each other. Dr. Cross reached for the chip. "May I look at it?" Kate nodded. Cross put the chip into a secure computer. His fingers moved fast across the holographic display. His eyes went wide as he read the data. My God, he actually saved all the information. I thought it was all destroyed when Denver was hit. Kate leaned forward. "What is it? What is Project Harbinger?" General Brooks spoke carefully. Project Harbinger was a secret program. We started it 50 years ago, right after first contact with the Zelthar. When we realized how aggressive they were and how many species they had conquered, some people in our government decided we needed a backup plan. Kate asked the obvious question. "A backup plan for what?" Admiral Hughes stood up and walked to the window. Beyond it, Jupiter's great red spot swirled like a wound. A backup plan for exactly what just happened. The Zelthar have better weapons than us. They have more ships than us. But they make mistakes. They assume other species think like they do. They're conquerors. They understand force and power. What they don't understand is humanity's greatest weapon. Kate was confused. "What weapon?" Dr. Cross said one word quietly. "Spite. The refusal to give up even when everything says we should. The Zelthar conquered 17 species. Do you know how many of them kept fighting after their homeworlds fell?" Kate shook her head. "None. 0. Every single species surrendered within weeks. They saw superior force and gave up. But humans," Cross smiled grimly, "we've never been good at accepting defeat. So Project Harbinger was designed to use that trait as a weapon." He turned on the holographic display. Kate gasped as images filled the air around them. Designs for weapons she had never imagined. Not guns or missiles, but psychological warfare plans, information campaigns, economic sabotage programs, and other strange things, General Brooks explained. "The Zelthar expect us to fight like they do. Big fleet battles, bombing planets, direct military conquest. They can beat us in that kind of fight. But Project Harbinger takes a different approach. It attacks every other part of their empire." Dr. Cross highlighted one section. "Your father was the main designer of this project before he retired. He created most of these systems himself. Here, for example, is a cultural virus. It's a set of ideas spread through entertainment and social media. It's designed to make the Zelthar's conquered population start questioning authority. Another section appeared. This is an economic disruption program. The Zelthar Empire runs on a complex system of trade and tribute. We can't destroy their economy, but we can make it very inefficient. We introduce delays, shortages, and corruption. Death by 1,000 small cuts. Admiral Hughes pointed to a third section. And this is the most important part. A network of sleeper agents living in Zelthar society for the past 40 years. Humans who learned their language and customs and weaknesses. They're waiting for activation codes. Kate studied the information carefully. So instead of trying to beat them in normal combat, we make their empire destroy itself from the inside. General Brooks nodded. Exactly, we turn their size and complexity against them. We make them paranoid, inefficient, and divided. And while they're dealing with 1,000 internal problems, we rebuild our strength. Dr. Cross added more information. Your father called it extreme asymmetric warfare, not guerrilla tactics, not insurgency. Complete subversion. We turn everything the Zelthar think they know about war into a weakness. Kate looked up from the displays. How long will it take to start this? Admiral Hughes answered. With the activation codes your father saved, we can start within 48 hours. But Kate, you need to understand something. This isn't clean warfare. This isn't honorable. We're going to do things that will make some people question if we're still the good guys. Kate's voice was cold. They killed 3 billion people. They murdered my family. Honor died with Earth. What matters now is survival and making them pay. General Brooks nodded slowly. Then welcome to Project Harbinger, Lieutenant Commander. You've just been promoted to Major. You're now the field coordinator for this project. Your father's work will continue through you. Kate stood up and accepted the new rank badges that Brooks gave her. Through the window, Jupiter's storms raged on, endless and patient. Humanity would be the same. Patient, relentless, unstoppable. The Zelthar had awakened something in humanity they didn't understand. They thought they had won by destroying Earth. They thought humans would surrender or be crushed completely. But they were wrong. The war was just beginning, and it would be unlike any war they had ever fought. Kate left the Admiral's office with new purpose. Her family was gone. Earth was wounded. But she had a mission now. She had her father's legacy. She had 47 secret agents waiting across the galaxy, and she had humanity's greatest weapon, the one thing the Zelthar could never defeat. The absolute refusal to give up. Surrender. No negotiation. Just emptiness where the Empire expected humans to give up. At Jupiter Station, Kate Morrison and her new team worked day and night. Project Harbinger needed careful timing. One mistake, one discovered agent, and the entire network could fail before it even started. Her second in command was Commander Paul Jensen. He was a career intelligence officer who had spent 15 years studying the Zelthar. He was thin and intense with eyes that showed he had looked at too many classified files. He became Kate's. The Zelthar deadline came and went. Humanity's answer was silence. No-eyed into the complex system her father had built. Paul pulled up a star map of Zelthar space. Your father was brilliant. He understood that the Empire's strength is also its greatest weakness. They've conquered 17 species and spread themselves across 300 star systems. That's a lot of places where things can go wrong. The map showed the Zelthar Empire as a huge network of connected systems, resource centers, manufacturing planets, military bases, all linked by complex supply chains and communication networks. Paul continued explaining. Phase 1 targets their supply system. We have 17 sleeper agents at key transportation centers. They won't do anything dramatic, just small things. A wrong shipping code here, a delayed cargo check there, a navigation mistake that adds 3 days to a delivery. Kate frowned. That doesn't sound like much. Paul smiled. Alone, it's not much. But multiply it by 17 agents across hundreds of shipments per week and it grows. The Zelthar military runs on just-in-time delivery. They don't store extra supplies because it's wasteful. So when supplies start arriving late or damaged or to wrong locations, entire battle groups can run short of ammunition or fuel. Kate studied the computer models. Her father's software showed how these small problems would cascade. After 2 weeks, ammunition supplies to frontier fleets would drop by 8%. After a month, 15%. After 3 months, the entire supply network would be so tangled that the Empire would need to use military ships just to fix it. Kate asked about the next step. What about Phase 2? Paul brought up different files. Information warfare. We have 12 agents inside the Zelthar communication networks. They'll start adding noise to the system. False intelligence reports, exaggerated threat warnings, rumors about human weapons that don't exist. Kate understood. You want to make them paranoid. Paul nodded. Exactly. The Zelthar have never faced serious resistance before. Every species they conquered either gave up or was destroyed. But humans are different. We're like ghosts in their system now. They'll start seeing threats everywhere. And when you're paranoid, you make mistakes. You waste resources investigating nothing. You don't trust your own people. Kate felt a dark satisfaction. This was like chess, not a simple fight. Not the honorable combat the Zelthar expected, but something far more dangerous. She asked the next question. And what about Phase 3? Paul's face became serious. Phase 3 is where things get really dirty. Cultural subversion. We have agents in Zelthar schools, entertainment networks, and social media. They're going to spread ideas. Dangerous ideas. He showed her a document. Kate read it and felt her stomach tighten. It was a propaganda plan designed to make conquered species question their place in the Empire, to make them wonder why they served the Zelthar, to plant seeds of rebellion. Paul spoke quietly. Your father called it revolution in a bottle. We can't overthrow the Empire ourselves, but we can make the 17 conquered species do it for us. It will take years, maybe decades. But when these ideas take root and enough people start questioning the system, empires fall. Kate thought of her family, of the billions dead, of Earth burning. She made her decision. Do it. Activate all phases at the same time. Paul looked surprised. That's aggressive. Your father's plan was to space them out to avoid being detected. Kate's voice was firm. My father didn't watch his homeworld die. I did hit them with everything at once. Let them try to figure out what's happening while their empire starts falling apart. Paul nodded slowly. I'll send the activation codes. God help us all. The codes went out that night. They used quantum encryption that would take the Zelthar years to break. Across 300 star systems, 47 human agents received their orders. These were men and women who had lived among aliens for years, some for decades. They had prepared for a day they hoped would never come. Now that day had arrived. On Zelthar Prime, the Empire's capital world, a dock worker named Helen Cho received her codes. For 18 years she had lived among them. She had learned their language, married one of them, and raised hybrid children. Now she accessed the shipping database and began making small errors. Nothing obvious, just enough to cause delays. On the industrial world of Kelvar, a communications worker named Greg Walsh started his work. He inserted false reports into the intelligence network, sightings of human warships where none existed, fake transmissions about terrible new weapons, threats that were pure fiction but would seem very real. On the university world of Telkesh, a professor named Lisa Yoon began teaching her Zelthar students about human history, about revolutions, about the French uprising, American independence, the fall of tyrants. She taught it as history, as simple facts, but ideas have a way of escaping the classroom. Within 72 hours, the first cracks appeared. A military convoy missed its delivery time, leaving a battle group short of missiles. An intelligence officer spent 3 days investigating a fake human fleet that didn't exist. A student on Telkesh asked her teacher a question no one had ever asked before. Why do we serve them? Small things. Tiny cracks in a structure the Zelthar believed was unbreakable. Kate watched the first reports come in. She felt something cold and hard settle in her chest. This was just the beginning. The Zelthar had started a war. Now humanity would show them how wars really ended. Not with surrender, not with honor, but with the slow, careful destruction of everything the enemy valued. The Zelthar thought they had won when they destroyed Earth. They had no idea what they had actually done. They had given humanity a reason to fight. They had taken away everything that made humans want peace. And now they would face the consequences. Kate stood in the operations center and looked at the star maps. Somewhere out there, 47 agents were beginning their work. Somewhere out there, the great Zelthar Empire was starting to rot from within. It would take time. It would take patience. But it would happen. The Empire had awakened Earth's real weapons. Not bombs or ships, but human stubbornness, human creativity, human spite. And those weapons, once unleashed, could not be stopped. 6 months after Earth fell, the Zelthar Empire was starting to feel the pressure. Kate Morrison was now Colonel Morrison after another quick promotion. She stood in the war room at Jupiter Station. The walls were covered with screens showing the Empire's slow collapse. It was beautiful in a terrible way, like watching a huge tree die from diseased roots. Lieutenant Susan Graham was in charge of supply analysis. She gave her report. Supply chain efficiency is down 23% across all military areas. Their supply officers are going crazy trying to understand why shipments keep getting delayed or sent to wrong places. They've started 6 separate investigations, but they keep looking for traditional sabotage, explosives, cyber attacks. They haven't figured out that the problem is built into the system. Kate allowed herself a small smile. Helen Cho and the other logistics agents had done amazing work. The beauty of their approach was its subtlety. No big explosions, no obvious destruction, just inefficiency, growing day by day until the entire supply network was straining under its own weight. Kate asked her next question. What about intelligence warfare? Commander Paul Jensen showed new data. Even better news. The Zelthar leadership is seeing human threats everywhere. Last week they sent an entire battle group to investigate reported human activity in the Krell sector. It was nothing, a ghost. But they spent 3 weeks searching and burned enough fuel to supply a small invasion. Major Carl Hayes was the main intelligence analyst. He added more information. They're starting to make decisions based on fear rather than facts. We've intercepted communication showing increased paranoia at the highest levels. They're questioning their own people, investigating loyalties, looking for human spies in places where we don't even have agents. Kate nodded with satisfaction. Perfect. When an empire stops trusting itself, it's already dead. It just doesn't know it yet. What about Phase 3? This was the information Kate had been waiting for. Dr. Angela Price was the cultural warfare expert. She brought up social media data from various conquered species in the Empire. Angela could barely hide her excitement. The ideas are spreading faster than we predicted. Professor Yoon's lectures on human history have been copied and shared across 17 different worlds. Students are discussing them, questioning them, applying them to their own lives. She pointed to several important facts. On the industrial world of Drax 7, workers have started organizing what they call labor councils. It's the first sign of workers standing together we've seen anywhere in Zelthar territory. On Mira 3, there was a peaceful protest last week. 5,000 people in the capital, demanding better treatment from their Zelthar rulers. Kate needed to know more. How did the Zelthar respond? Angela's smile was grim, violently, which was exactly the wrong choice. They sent security forces, arrested people, used tear gas. All of it was recorded on video and shared across the planet's internet. Now they have martyrs. Now they have symbols. The more they crack down, the more support the movement gains. Kate studied the data and thought about her father. He had understood how this worked. Tyrannies could handle violent rebellion. They had plans for that, military responses, overwhelming force. But peaceful resistance? Ideas spreading through populations like water through cracks in stone? That was harder to fight. You couldn't shoot an idea. You couldn't bomb a thought. The more brutally you responded, the more you proved the protesters were right. Angela continued with more good news. There's more. We're starting to see divisions within the Zelthar themselves. The younger generation, especially those who grew up after first contact with humanity, they're questioning the old ways. There's a movement on Zelthar Prime called the Progressive Collective. They want reform. They want to treat conquered species better. They want to change from an empire to a federation. Kate asked the critical question. How large is this movement? Angela checked her data. Small. Maybe 2% of the Zelthar population. But that's 2% more than existed a year ago. And they're mostly young people, educated people, future leaders. Plant seeds in that group and in 20 years you have a revolution. Kate felt fierce satisfaction. This was her father's masterpiece coming to life. Not a quick victory, but a patient one. Not a war won with ships and guns, but with ideas and time. Paul added more information. Meanwhile, we've been quietly rebuilding. The refugee fleet has set up hidden bases in 3 different systems. We have shipyards making new ships. Not big ones yet, but escort carriers, destroyers, missile frigates. In another year, we'll have a fleet that can actually challenge Zelthar forces. Kate shook her head. But we won't fight them directly. That's what they expect. We'll use those ships for raids. Quick attacks on their supply lines. Never anything big enough to make them send their main fleet after us, but enough to keep them worried and off balance. She pulled up a map showing possible raid targets. These 12 systems are critical points in their supply network. We hit them one by one, starting next month. Nothing dramatic. A missile strike here, some space mines there. Just enough to make them send more resources to protection, to make their already strained supply system even less efficient. Admiral Frank Hughes entered the operations center. His face was serious but determined. "Colonel Morrison, we've received reports from our agents in the Empire. The Zelthar High Council is holding an emergency meeting. They're discussing the human problem." Kate could guess what was happening. "Let me guess. They're arguing about how to respond. Some want to finish the job and send fleets to destroy us at Jupiter. Others want to focus on internal problems." Hughes nodded. "Exactly, they're paralyzed. Every choice looks bad. Attack us and they leave their territory vulnerable to rebellion. Focus on internal security and we have time to rebuild. They're caught in a trap and they don't even see it yet." Kate agreed. "Then we keep tightening the pressure, slowly, patiently. We're not trying to win this war in a year or even 10 years. We're trying to create conditions where the Empire collapses under its own weight." Hughes spoke quietly. "Your father would be proud." Kate thought of her family, of Earth, of the 3 billion dead. "I hope he can see this wherever he is. I hope they all can, because we're not just surviving. We're winning, one small piece at a time." Outside the window, the stars shone cold and eternal. Somewhere out there, the Zelthar Empire was beginning to crumble. Not with fire and explosions, but with whispers and doubts, with delayed shipments and missed connections, with questions asked and ideas shared. Humanity's real weapons weren't missiles or lasers. They were patience, persistence, and the complete refusal to accept defeat. The Zelthar had killed billions of humans. Now they would learn what happened when you made humanity angry, when you gave humans nothing left to lose, when you forced peaceful people to become dangerous. The war would not be won in battles. It would be won in supply warehouses and communication centers and classrooms. It would be won in the hearts and minds of conquered peoples who were learning they didn't have to stay conquered. And it would be won by humans who refused to break no matter how hard they were hit. 2 years after the attack on Earth, Kate Morrison stood on the bridge of the carrier Freedom's Dawn. The ship was humanity's new flagship, a symbol of their comeback. Around it, a fleet of 200 human ships stayed in perfect formation. It was the largest military force Earth had built since the war began, but they weren't going to use it for battle. Not yet. Admiral Frank Hughes entered the bridge. He was now in his 70s, but still sharp and focused. "General Morrison," he said. Kate had received her general's rank 4 months ago. "The reports are in from all areas. You need to see this." He turned on the main display. The Zelthar Empire appeared as a web of connected systems, but now that web looked torn and broken. Red marks showed systems in open rebellion. Yellow showed areas of unrest. Only a third of the Empire remained stable, and even those systems had problems. Hughes began reading the reports. Drax 7 has declared independence. They formed their own government and kicked out all Zelthar administrators. The Empire sent a fleet to retake the planet, but they couldn't spare enough ships to do the job properly. The rebellion won. Kate felt a wave of satisfaction. Drax 7, the first world where workers had organized together. The seed her father had planted had grown into a tree, Hughes continued. Mira 3 and Telkesh have done the same. 5 other worlds are close to rebellion. The Progressive Collective on Zelthar Prime now controls 30% of Parliament. They're pushing for complete restructuring of the Empire. They want to change from forced control to voluntary cooperation. Kate asked about the military. And their armed forces? Hughes showed more data. In terrible shape. Their supply network is so disrupted that most battle groups operate at 60% strength. They have to escort supply convoys with warships because piracy has exploded in the chaos. Their intelligence services are consumed with internal investigations, hunting for traitors and spies. And soldier morale is at the lowest level ever recorded. Paul Jensen joined them at the display. We've also been receiving peace offers. Not from the High Council, but from several regional governors. They want to negotiate. Some are even offering to recognize human control over Earth if we help them keep order in their territories. Kate studied the map carefully. 2 years of patient work had brought them to this moment. The Empire hadn't fallen to human weapons. It had fallen to its own contradictions, to the weight of its crimes, to the natural decay that destroyed all tyrannies. Humanity had only sped up the process, she asked quietly. What's the situation on Earth? Hughes' expression softened. We sent the first expeditionary fleet home 2 weeks ago. They found the planet empty. The Zelthar pulled out 6 months after the first attack. They realized they couldn't hold it without massive forces stationed there. Earth is scarred, but she's healing. The atmosphere is still breathable. The oceans still flow. Life survived. Kate closed her eyes. Earth. Home. Wounded, but alive. Just like humanity itself, she made a decision. I want to speak to the fleet. 10 minutes later, Kate stood before a camera. She knew her words would go to every ship in the human fleet and be sent to civilian populations on Jupiter, Mars, and other refugee settlements. She began speaking. 2 years ago, the Zelthar Empire attacked Earth without warning. They killed 3 billion people. They destroyed our cities, our homes, our way of life. They thought they had won. They thought we would surrender or be crushed. She paused, letting the memories flow through her. Her father's face, her mother's smile, Danny's laugh, Claire's determination, all gone, but never forgotten. They were wrong. The Zelthar never understood humanity's real weapons. They saw our ships, our missiles, our armies. What they didn't see was our patience, our creativity, our absolute refusal to accept defeat. They didn't understand that humans fight with everything we have, not just what's in our weapon storage. For 2 years, we've fought a different kind of war. Not battles and bombing, but ideas and persistence. We've shown the conquered peoples of the Empire that tyranny is not inevitable. We've demonstrated that efficiency can be turned against the efficient. We've proven that an empire built on fear will eventually choke on that fear. Today, the Zelthar Empire is collapsing, not because we destroyed it, but because we exposed its basic weakness. No empire can stand when its subjects refuse to be subjects anymore. No tyranny survives when people remember they have a choice. Kate's voice became harder. But we are not finished. The Zelthar attacked us. They murdered billions. And while we will not become monsters to defeat monsters, we will see justice done. We will hold them responsible. Every leader who ordered the attack, every commander who carried it out, every pilot who burned our cities will face trial under human law. And to the Zelthar themselves, I say this. You thought you knew what humans were. You thought we were weak. You thought we would break. You were wrong on every count. We are going home. We are rebuilding Earth. And we will remember what you did. For generations to come, humanity will remember. And we will make sure the galaxy never forgets. She finished and cut the transmission. The bridge was silent for a moment, then erupted in applause. Kate accepted their congratulations, but her mind was somewhere else. She was thinking of her father's last words. Make them pay. Not for revenge, for justice. 4 months later, Kate Morrison stood in the ruins of Denver, at the place where her childhood home had been. The crater was filled in now. The debris was cleared. A memorial stood here, listing the names of every person who died in the attack. 3 billion names carved in stone that would last longer than empires. She found her family's names. Richard Morrison, Linda Morrison, Daniel Morrison, Claire Morrison. She touched each one, feeling the cold stone under her fingers. We did it, Dad, she said quietly. We showed them. Earth's real weapons weren't the ones they expected. They were patience, persistence, the refusal to break, the willingness to play the long game. You taught me that. You planned for this, and it worked. The wind blew across the memorial site, carrying the smell of new grass growing in the healing earth. Above, the sky was blue again. The smoke and ash were long gone. Construction crews worked in the distance, rebuilding the city block by block. It would take decades, maybe centuries, but it would be done. Behind Kate, Admiral Hughes walked up to her. The first transport ships are coming from Jupiter. 50,000 people ready to come home. This is just the start. Within a year, we'll have 1 million people on Earth. Within 10 years, 1 billion. We're going to rebuild. Kate nodded, still looking at her family's names. And we're going to remember. Every school will teach what happened. Every child will learn about the attack and the war. Not to create hatred, but to make sure it never happens again. To remind us why we fight when we must and why we choose peace when we can. Hughes added more news. The Zelthar trials start next month. The Progressive Collective on their homeworld is cooperating fully. They're turning over every officer involved in the attack. We'll have justice, Kate asked about the future. And after the trials, Hughes explained. After that, we move forward. The former conquered species want to form a federation. They're asking humans to be founding members. They see us as liberators, though we never fired a shot to free them. We just showed them the door. They walked through it themselves. Kate finally turned away from the memorial. Then we accept their offer. We build something better than the Empire. Something based on agreement, not force. Cooperation, not control. That's how we truly defeat them. Not by becoming what they were, but by being better than they could ever imagine. They walked together through the ruins of Denver. They passed construction sites and memorial gardens. They passed people beginning to rebuild their lives. The scars would remain for generations, but scars were proof of survival. Evidence that what had been wounded had also healed. The Zelthar Empire had killed Kate Morrison's family, had murdered billions, had burned Earth and thought they had won. But they had awakened something they didn't understand. Not humanity's weapons of war, but humanity's weapons of perseverance. The long game. The patient grinding down of tyranny through ideas and will and the absolute refusal to surrender. In the end, that had been more powerful than any fleet. More devastating than any bomb. More unstoppable than any army. 1 year later, Kate stood in the newly rebuilt council chamber in Geneva. The room was filled with representatives from 23 different species. Humans, the former subjects of the Zelthar Empire, and even some reformed Zelthar themselves, members of the progressive collective who had helped bring down the old regime. Today was the founding day of the Galactic Federation. A new government based on consent and cooperation. Every member species had equal representation. Every voice would be heard. It was the opposite of everything the Empire had been. Kate had been asked to give the opening speech. She stood at the podium and looked out at the assembled representatives. Some were human. Many were not. All had suffered under the Empire. All had fought for their freedom in their own ways. She began speaking. 3 years ago, the Zelthar Empire attacked Earth. They thought they were conquering another weak species. They thought we would surrender like the others. They were wrong. Not because we were stronger, not because we had better weapons, but because we refused to give up. That refusal inspired others. Workers on Drax 7 saw that resistance was possible. Students on Telkesh learned that ideas could be weapons. Citizens across the Empire began to question why they served masters who gave them nothing but suffering. The Empire fell not because humanity destroyed it. It fell because its subjects chose freedom. Because people across hundreds of worlds decided they deserved better. We merely showed them the path. You walked it yourselves. Today we gather not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals. Today we begin building something the galaxy has never seen. A true federation where every species has a voice. Where cooperation replaces domination. Where different peoples work together for common goals. It won't be easy. We come from different worlds, different cultures, different ways of thinking. We will disagree. We will argue. But we will do so as partners, not as masters and slaves. And that makes all the difference. Kate paused and looked around the room. To my fellow humans, I say this. Remember what we lost. Remember the 3 billion who died. But also remember what we learned. That peace is precious. That war should always be the last choice, never the first. That our greatest strength isn't in our weapons, but in our determination to survive and our willingness to help others do the same. To the Zelthar who stand here with us today, I say this. You are not your parents. You are not responsible for the crimes of the old empire. You chose to reform. You chose to help build something better. We welcome you as equals and partners. And to all the species gathered here, I say this. The road ahead will be difficult. Building is always harder than destroying. Creating trust takes time. But if we work together, if we remain committed to our shared values, we can create something that lasts. Something our children and grandchildren will be proud of. She finished her speech. The chamber erupted in applause. Representatives from dozens of worlds stood and clapped. Some cheered in languages Kate didn't understand, but the meaning was clear. Hope, unity, a new beginning. After the ceremony, Kate walked outside into the Geneva evening. The city was still being rebuilt. Construction cranes dotted the skyline. But there were also parks growing back, cafes reopening, children playing in the streets. Life returning to normal, or at least to a new kind of normal. Paul Jensen found her standing by the lake. He had been promoted to admiral and now commanded the Federation's intelligence services. It's a good start, he said. Kate nodded. Just a start. We have so much work ahead. Rebuilding Earth. helping the other worlds recover, making sure this Federation actually works, making sure we never forget what tyranny costs. Paul looked out across the lake. Your father would be amazed at what you've accomplished. What we've all accomplished. Kate thought about that. I hope so. I hope he's watching somehow. Him and Mom and Danny and Claire. I hope they can see that their deaths weren't meaningless. That something good came from all that pain. They stood in silence for a while, watching the sun set over the recovering city. Kate thought about everything that had happened. The attack, the loss, the long struggle, the patient work of 47 agents across the galaxy, the slow crumbling of the Empire, the rise of the Federation. 3 years ago, she had stood on a spaceship watching Earth burn. She had lost everything. Her family, her home, her innocence. But she had gained something too. Purpose, determination, the knowledge that humans could survive anything if they refused to give up. The Zelthar had thought they understood humanity. They had studied human ships and weapons and military tactics, but they had missed the most important things. Human stubbornness, human creativity, human spite when wronged, and most importantly, the human ability to turn suffering into strength and loss into purpose. Those were Earth's real weapons, not missiles or lasers or bombs, but ideas and persistence and the refusal to break. Weapons the Zelthar had never encountered before. Weapons they couldn't defend against because they didn't even know to look for them. Kate looked up at the darkening sky. Stars were beginning to appear. Somewhere up there, former enemy worlds were now allies. Somewhere up there, people who had been slaves were now free. Somewhere up there, the galaxy was changing because humans had shown that empires could fall and something better could rise from the ashes. She smiled. It was a tired smile, but a real one. The first genuine smile she had managed since the attack 3 years ago. They had done it. Against all odds, against overwhelming force, against an enemy that had never lost before, humanity had won. Not through strength of arms, but through strength of spirit. The war was over. The real work of peace was just beginning. But Kate was ready. Humanity was ready. And together with their new allies, they would build a future worth fighting for. She turned to Paul. Come on. We have a federation to help run, meetings to attend, decisions to make. The galaxy isn't going to unite itself, Paul laughed. Always the practical one. Let's get to work. They walked back toward the council chamber together. Behind them, the sun finished setting on Geneva. Above them, the stars came out one by one, and somewhere among those stars 3 billion souls rested, knowing their sacrifice had not been in vain, knowing that humanity had survived, knowing that Earth would heal, knowing that the future, while different from what might have been, was still bright with possibility. The Zelthar Empire had killed Kate Morrison's family, but in doing so, they had created something they never expected, a determined enemy who understood that the best revenge was not destruction, but creation, not matching evil with evil, but responding to tyranny with justice and to conquest with cooperation. That was humanity's greatest weapon, and it had won the war.